Hello my friends, welcome back to another art making video. I want to paint with you guys today. We are going to paint a beautiful field of Cosmo flowers under a big bright full moon. I wanted to paint these Cosmo flowers because these flowers right here were the last of the Cosmo flowers out of my garden for this year. It was about to freeze this coming night, and so I picked all of the Cosmos, put them in a vase, and wanted to enjoy them for as long as possible before they were all gone. So I thought, what better way to celebrate them and how amazingly beautiful they are than do an entire painting dedicated to these beauties. I will be painting, but I encourage you to create in whatever way you would like to as well along with me, because it's always more fun to make art with somebody else. And I do have something for you if you are one of my coloring friends. I have a coloring page that looks like this to go along with this painting. So you can color along while I paint, or you can even use it as line art to make your own painting or some other type of art using whatever medium you'd like. So that freebie is available for you down below. Go ahead and download it and start making some art. If you make art while I make art, I promise you it's going to help you feel better. It's going to lift your mood, and creativity is contagious. You might think you're just going to watch me, but you're going to be itching to make something too. If you're new to my channel, you may not know this, but I do want to start doing this more often. I did this in a previous video, this one here, where I provide some coloring page or line art to go along with the mixed media or whatever painting I might be working on so that you can create with me. And I hope that just spreads some joy and happiness to you and gets you creating, because like I said, it is healing and it will make you feel better. Alright, back to this painting. What you've been seeing me do is put on a layer of this Liquitex gesso on these wood panels. And then that needed to dry for 24 hours, which I was not prepared for. So I decided to test out some of my Ohuhu alcohol markers in my coloring book. This is my Cozy Cottagecore coloring book, and this is one of the test pages in the front. And I wanted to see how the alcohol markers would behave on this paper, because I had been under the impression that it would be a complete failure and would never work. However, I was so pleasantly surprised. It works beautifully. It's a lot of fun. There are some tips and tricks to it, which I can put in a future video, but I just wanted to share this with you because this is what I did while I was waiting for those panels to dry. I ended up working on them the next day instead of this same day like I was hoping to do, but instead I just had fun coloring in this coloring book. I think this is actually going to become one of my favorite or new favorite ways to color, and that's by putting down a layer of this alcohol marker as like a base, or I guess some people call it basing, and then putting colored pencil over the top to add more detail, texture, whatnot. I love the vibrancy that I can get by combining these materials this way. My mind is so blown, and I actually spent this last weekend coloring several pages this way to get my mind off of heavy things and to get back to a place of joy, and coloring and art making does that for me. And so I have a lot of new artwork to share soon for pages that I finished, and they really made me so happy, and I wish I had known about using my markers in my book sooner. The main reason I had never tried this is because I had seen so many complaints from other colorists about KDP paper quality and not being able to use any kind of wet media like a marker. However, I think that has to do with books that have images on both sides of the paper, which none of my coloring books do that. I always have single-sided images. So when you flip the page, there's nothing on the back. Therefore, as long as you've put a few sheets of paper or the cardboard backing piece that I always send with my books when you buy from my online shop and not Amazon, when you buy them from me, I always send you that board. That way you can do this. You just tuck it between your pages. So I made the mistake of just listening to others instead of testing things out for myself. But now I know, and now I can share the good news with you that yes, if you have alcohol markers, you can use them in my coloring books, even though it's KDP paper. It will work beautifully. It's so much fun, and you can get so much vibrancy out of it. There's just, like I said, a few little tips and tricks that make it a more enjoyable experience, but it is possible. Alright, so we are about to jump back into my painting, which, let's just go over some details. It is going to be like a mixed media painting. I'm using several different kinds of paint and just really experimenting because it's been a long time since I've done a painting like this. I have been doing mostly watercolor, and then kind of mixing watercolor with a bit of gouache sometimes, but I have not dipped into acrylics and things like this in forever. So I needed to get back into the swing of things and find my confidence again. For materials, like I said, I mixed a lot of different things. So I've got acrylic gouache, acrylic paint, and then also like some mixing mediums, which were a lot of fun to use. The kind of white liquid that you see underneath each of my paint colors is a slow dry blending medium by Liquitex, and what that's going to do is it's going to make sure my paint doesn't dry really fast. It's going to give me more time to blend things, which is something that I really enjoy doing. I like working with thick paint, and I like to be able to blend things and add more color in for a longer period of time. Acrylic dries really fast, right? So by adding in this slow dry blending medium, it just gives me a lot more playtime, which, like I said, I needed. I have not done this kind of painting in so long. So I'm just using my little cheapy plastic palette knife to mix these up and to really make sure that blending medium is blended in to my colors. That way they will go further and stay wet for longer. And then I'm actually going to put it all on with a paintbrush onto the canvas, but I just wanted to mix it with that palette knife first so I didn't gunk up my paintbrush right away. And now I'm spraying some water over it to give it a little bit more moisture in there to make them last even longer. So I'm diving in with some white paint into the sky for now. It gives a nice base to blend into, spraying a little more water into it. I highly recommend having a spray bottle of water when painting, even if you're painting like with watercolor. It's so handy. For this painting, I wanted it to be Cosmo inspired, not just like Cosmo flowers, but also the cosmos, the sky, right? Like nighttime. So I'm going with these kind of pale lavenders, a little bit of a bluish lavender, and then that teal I want to put around the very edges and towards the bottom. And I just really want it to feel like a field of flowers in the moonlight. So I'll be kind of mixing and changing these colors a bit, and also changing up the texture quite a bit. But the technique that I'm using right now is just kind of slapping on a lot of color, filling in the spaces, and then once I've got most of the color where I want it, I'm going to pick up a dry brush that's going to act like a mop brush for me. I don't have like a true big fluffy mop brush like you might see traditionally. I just have like this thick large brush that I'm going to use in a very like light circular motion to help blend all of these colors together in a few minutes. It's so wild to me that I've sort of fallen out of practice with doing this kind of painting, because I actually used to teach those in-person paint night events for years. And that meant I was doing a painting on like a 16 by 20 canvas in about 2 hours with a group of people and teaching them how to do it with like all the delusional confidence in the world. And since I haven't done that in many years now, I've got to like get back into the practice doing this. Like I said, so wild. I used to go into those paintings with, I'd have a plan, but I had never actually painted the painting before that we were going to do. And my thought process behind it was, well, if I can't do this for the first time, how could I expect any of my students to do it for the first time? And so I laugh at this so hard that I used to do that and had all the confidence to do that as a 20-something-year-old. All that to say, I'm getting back into a habit of painting more often. I bought several canvases, well, wood panels basically, to paint on. I don't know why I chose wood panel, it just seemed like fun. I don't have like a really good reason for it. I've watched some other artists painting on wood panel and it just looked really, I don't know, elevated or something. So that's what I'm attempting here for the first time and really enjoying it, by the way. So hopefully you will see lots of future videos of painting like this, but it doesn't mean I will not be doing watercolor and color along as well. I'm going to be mixing it up and doing lots of different art making videos, and I hope that you will continue to join me along for these videos and you will make some art with me. Okay, so here we go. We're putting in some darker color around the edges now. I am trying to build that up so that way it will actually look like some kind of grass or hill or field back here. And now I am using that kind of mop brush technique to swirl and blend these colors together really softly. So this brush is dry, it did not have anything on it, and I'm just very feather light pressure blending in my colors and letting there be some texture and whatnot. I don't want to smooth it all out and make it perfectly smooth. Some people might want to do that. That's not what I wanted. Like I said, I like thick paint and lots of texture. And now I'm mixing up some new paint, some pinks for my flowers, and I'm adding in this really cool iridescent medium by Liquitex. So this is going to give it kind of a pearlescent shimmer to it when it dries, and I love that. It feels very magical and fun, and I wanted to test it out. And I've also mixed this in with my gouache and even sometimes my watercolor, and I've enjoyed those outcomes. It's just fun to experiment, isn't it? These first flowers are going to be really soft kind of in the background, and just to get some color put in there, and to also start mapping out where I want some flowers. Going into this painting, I did have a little bit of a plan where I decided where my moon was going to be and where like my hero flowers were going to be. And what I mean by hero flowers is like the main ones, the ones that will really catch your attention first before you start looking at background elements. So I did have a little bit of a plan, and later you'll see once I get more things in place in the background, you'll see me use a watercolor pencil to draw my flowers in a little bit more. And here I am tapping in some splattery stars, which I loved the effect on the painting, didn't love that it got everywhere on my desk, including my candle. However, like, whatever, it's fine, right? We're just gonna roll with it. It worked for the painting, and that's great. And now she's feeling brave. She's going in freestyle with this moon here. Normally I would give myself a circle, but I guess I was just feeling it and I went for it and I let it be what it was gonna be. So typically I start small and then let it get larger and larger as I perfect the shape. And when I say perfect, I don't mean perfect. So I mean make it passable. Now, another thing you're going to notice is occasionally we will enter some sort of time warp and parts of my painting process are gone. And that's simply because I would get into a zone of painting and forget that when I went to change my camera angle, I didn't actually turn the camera on. So there will be a few areas here that are missing, but that's okay. We're gonna roll with it. So you'll notice I did add in a little bit of like crater-like shapes into the moon, along with a little bit of shadow, a little bit more detailed stars, and now we're finally putting in some foreground element. This is gonna get blended out with my mop brush technique, but I'm just getting some color in there, getting some greenery, and then I'm gonna do something that I, again, didn't film, but I just brushed in some tall grass-like shapes to start building up and layering up some textures and shape back there. So it actually looks like there's something behind the flowers and they're not just floating against the sky. I wanted there to be some grass back there. And what I'm doing here is I'm taking that mop brush, swirling that color around, and then when I feel like I'm picking up too much color, I wipe it off on a clean paper towel so that my brush is a little bit cleaner again, and then swirling that color back in to soften it, because there was a little bit too much paint on there for the effect I was going for. So I'm picking up some of the paint, dabbing it onto paper towel, coming back in and brushing away or softening it up a little bit more. And here you're going to see me just cover up that little flower, and it'll come back later. But for now, I realized that I kind of messed that up. I should have waited to put those in until I put a base of green in. But hey, we're learning, we're experimenting, we're having fun, and that's what we're meant to be doing. I had kind of forgotten, but that is one of the really beautiful things about working with gouache or acrylic gouache, is that you can paint in these layers and redo things if you need to. Cover it up and try again. So here's where you'll see we've entered another time warp, and the grasses are in place, the background grass. And now I'm using a watercolor pencil to put in my flower shapes. I'm just drawing in, sometimes I'm just putting in a circle, and then other times I'm actually adding in petal shapes that I can follow. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm putting in more defined petal shapes. And this watercolor pencil drew really nicely over the top of this paint, and I decided to go for a pink color because these flowers are going to be pink, so it'll be hidden really nicely. And even if I don't cover up a line perfectly, it still is gonna kind of blend in anyway. Like your eye isn't going to notice my little sketchy marks if I don't cover them perfectly. So I'm finally painting the parts I was the most excited for, my Cosmo flowers. I'm using a really small filbert style brush, so it's rounded on the end, it's not perfectly flat, and that's going to help me get that end of the petal shape a little bit better than if I were using like a perfectly flat brush. And you will notice that my technique for painting these flowers is to start with a mid-tone first and then layer up my other colors. And what I mean by mid-tone is a color that's sort of in between my lightest colors that I'm going to put on these petals and my darkest colors that I'm going to put on the petals. And so I start with a base of a mid-tone pink, and then I will bounce between putting in some lights and darks based on how I'm assessing it and what I think it needs. And I even will dip into a little bit of like a yellowy or a warm yellow-orange color that I'm going to put into these petals as well as like a light pink, which is just my pink mixed with white, and then a little bit of my pink mixed with purple for my darker shadowy colors. I really like using purples and blues for my shadows instead of ever putting black into my paint. It just makes it more vibrant and more fun to paint with than black, in my opinion. Now, one of my favorite colors to paint with, which is what's helping me make the pinks for these Cosmo flowers, is quinacridone magenta. This one is from Golden Acrylics. However, I make sure to have some version of quinacridone magenta in all of my paints that I use. So like I have a watercolor that is that type of magenta, I have it in acrylic, and it helps me get this just most beautiful pink ever. I really love it, and if you like painting with vibrant colors and you want pink, I highly recommend some sort of quinacridone magenta. It feels ridiculous to say, but not ridiculous to paint with. So I have another round wood panel, and I'm kind of torn between, do I want to paint another version of these Cosmos with almost like a black background, or do I want to go in the complete opposite direction and do more of a daytime version of this painting? So I don't know. I'm waffling. We'll see. I'm kind of feeling like painting some more moonlight floral scenes. Just feels like me right now. It's making me happy. So I don't know, it might be where we're headed with this. I also just want to make sure we're all being realistic here, and you know that this painting took me way longer than 25 minutes, and I don't want you to feel rushed to make your art ever, and don't feel like this is what's normal, is to be able to whip a painting out like this in 20 minutes. I think if we took out the breaks that I had to take, this probably was about 3 to 3.5 hours for me to do this because I'm so out of practice with it. So again, not 20 minutes. Don't feel pressured or rushed to create your artwork. If you ever have specific questions about a technique, a supply, what I'm doing, you are always, always, always welcome to ask in the comments below, and I will get back to you. Or message me on Instagram or email me. I'm happy to help when I can, and I'd love to hear from you if you have comments or questions. Oof, and I'm gonna go ahead and apologize right now for this angle. She's still figuring out how to film in her studio, guys. My studio is kind of a tight, awkward space, and so I'm always trying to figure out where the best spot to put my phone, which is my camera, which spot works the best. And this one's not it. My hand is in the way. You can't see what I'm doing. This was a fail, and I apologize. I will do better. But it was the only footage I had of putting in a little bit of this fluorescent pink, which was just making my heart so happy. It really made these flowers come to life. And you'll see that we once again entered a time warp, and there are now more flowers, and there are kind of a purpley colored stem attached to them. I also dotted in a little bit of like a yellow flower in the very background, just to add a little bit more color and interest back there, because it was looking a little bit plain and boring. So I just added some stalks of some little yellow flowers, added yellows to the center of each of my flowers, kind of a yellowy orange, and that's about it for this. I'm going to tap in a little bit of a really bright light green to add a highlight or a glow. And then this painting is all wrapped. It's done, and I had a lot of fun, and I can't wait to make more of these. This painting is now sitting happily on my bookshelf and making it look so Cosmo. Now, I may end up selling this original at some point, and if I do, I'll let you guys know. It'll be available on my website, theswimmingowl.com, in my shop. But for now, it is making my bookshelf look gorgeous. So I'm going to give you some really nice close-ups and overviews of this here in just a second, after I brush in a few more foreground pieces of grass. I hope you enjoyed creating something with me today. I hope you had fun. I hope you feel lighter and happier after making something or after watching me make something. And I hope you've got that itch to create. I hope you feel like you've caught the bug and you want to do something artistic. Thanks for being here. I appreciate you. You are welcome here. You are loved here. And happy art making. Until next time.